A helpless 10-day-old Doberman puppy was left in a cardboard box, abandoned and too weak to even cry for help. His chances of survival were almost none. But then, a stranger discovered him. And what happened next not only saved his life, it changed everything in the most unbelievable way. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The alley was eerily quiet, shadows stretching long across the pavement as the sun dipped behind the buildings. In that silence sat a small cardboard box, damp from the cold ground and forgotten by everyone who passed. Inside, barely moving, was a 10-day-old Doberman puppy. His tiny body was fragile, his fur still thin and damp from the chill of the night. His eyes hadn't yet opened, and every shallow breath rattled in his chest. Too weak to cry, he let out only faint whimpers, so soft they barely rose above the sound of the wind. Whoever had left him there had walked away without a second glance, leaving the puppy's fate sealed by indifference. No food, no warmth, no mother's heartbeat to comfort him. Just silence, cardboard walls, and the creeping cold. The puppy squirmed weakly, searching for something that wasn't there. A mother's warmth, a gentle touch, any sign that life was worth holding on to. But the night grew colder, and his strength grew fainter. His story seemed destined to end, before it had truly begun. As the night deepened, the streetlights flickered to life, casting pale circles of light along the empty alley. Sarah, a young woman returning home after a long shift, hurried past, clutching her coat tight against the cold. She was lost in thought when a faint, almost invisible sound reached her ears. At first, she froze, unsure if it was the wind. But then it came again, a fragile whimper, thin and desperate. Her heart skipped. She followed the sound, her footsteps slowing as her eyes caught the small cardboard box. Kneeling down, she gently peeled back the flap. Inside, the sight broke her completely. A newborn Doberman puppy lay trembling, his tiny sides rising and falling with painful effort. His fur was damp, his body cold, his breaths barely audible. Sarah's hand covered her mouth as tears stung her eyes. She reached in carefully, scooping the fragile pup into her palms. He stirred weakly, pressing against the warmth of her skin as though clinging to the last hope he had. Sarah whispered, "Don't worry, little one. You're not alone anymore." Sarah hurried through her front door, cradling the tiny puppy against her chest. His body was still icy, his breaths so faint she feared each one might be his last. She quickly grabbed a soft towel, wrapping him tightly before switching on a small heater. The warmth filled the room, but she knew time was running out. In the kitchen, she scrambled to prepare warm formula, her hands trembling as she poured it into a tiny dropper. Sitting on the floor, she lifted the puppy gently and pressed the tip to his lips. For a long moment, nothing happened. His head drooped limply, his strength nearly gone. "Please, please fight," Sarah whispered, her eyes blurring with tears. She tried again, and at last, a tiny tongue flicked out. Slowly, he swallowed a single drop, then another. Relief surged through her chest. All night, Sarah fed him little by little, checking his breathing every hour. Sleep never came. Her entire world had narrowed to this fragile life in her hands, one she refused to let slip away. The first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, painting the room in pale light. Sarah sat slumped against the couch, exhaustion heavy in her limbs, but her eyes never strayed from the small bundle wrapped in towels beside the heater. She had fed him drop by drop, whispering encouragement through every fragile moment. Then, movement. The puppy's paw twitched ever so slightly, brushing against the fabric. Sarah sat upright, her heart leaping into her throat. She leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. Another twitch, this time followed by a weak squeak that cracked the silence of the room. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. She stroked his tiny head with her fingertip, whispering, "That's it, little one. Keep fighting." For the first time, his breathing seemed less ragged, more steady, as if his body had finally found the strength to hold on. When she offered the dropper again, he latched on more eagerly than before, trembling with effort but determined. Sarah's heart swelled with cautious hope. Against all odds, this tiny soul was choosing life, and she would not let him fight alone. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant care. Sarah fed the puppy every 2 hours, kept him wrapped in warm blankets, and watched his tiny chest rise and fall as though each breath was a fragile gift. For a while, hope grew stronger. But then, on the 4th night, his body went still. He refused the dropper, turning his weak head away. Panic surged through Sarah as she touched his cold nose and realized his breaths were shallow again. "No, not now," she whispered, cradling him against her chest. Her tears soaked the towel as she rocked him gently, begging him to hold on. Friends told her she had done enough, that maybe nature was making its decision. But Sarah couldn't accept that. This puppy had been abandoned once already. She would not abandon him too. Through the fear, she doubled her efforts, keeping him warm, rubbing his tiny paws to keep his blood moving, whispering over and over, "You are not alone." Her love became his lifeline in the darkest hours. On the 6th morning, Sarah awoke on the couch, her arms still cradling the tiny bundle. She blinked against the early light, her heart pounding with dread. Then, a sound pierced the silence, a sharp, desperate cry. Her eyes flew open. The puppy was moving, his small body trembling with life. Sarah gasped, tears springing instantly as she held him closer. His sealed eyelids fluttered, and with effort, he let out another cry, stronger than the last. She quickly prepared his formula, her hands shaking. When she touched the dropper to his lips, he latched on eagerly, drinking more than he ever had before. Minutes later, he pushed against her palm, wobbling onto unsteady legs for the first time. He collapsed quickly, but Sarah's laughter filled the room through her tears. "You're fighting," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're really fighting." That day marked a turning point. The fragile, forgotten puppy who had once been left for dead was no longer just surviving. He was beginning to live, and every heartbeat felt like a miracle Sarah would never forget. Weeks passed, and the frail little puppy who once fit in. The palm of Sarah's hand was now unrecognizable. His legs grew stronger each day, carrying him clumsily across the living room floor. Where there had once been silence, now there were playful yips, the thump of paws, and the sound of life echoing through the house. His eyes, once sealed shut, now shone with curiosity and mischief. He tugged at Sarah's shoelaces, chased after her slippers, and barked at his reflection in the mirror. Each stumble and tumble only made Sarah laugh through the tears of joy she never thought she'd get to shed. The bond between them deepened with every passing day. He followed her everywhere, his tail wagging like a flag of devotion. At night, he curled against her side, no longer a shivering bundle fighting for survival, but a growing Doberman with strength in his frame and love in his heart. Sarah looked at him one evening and whispered, "From the edge of death to this, you're my miracle." Months later, the Doberman who had once been abandoned in a damp box raced across the yard with boundless energy. His sleek coat gleamed in the sun, his paws pounding the ground with strength Sarah never imagined he would have. Watching him run free, her heart swelled with pride and relief. When he tired, he trotted back to her, pressing his head against her leg with a loyalty that words could never capture. She knelt down, cupping his strong face in her hands, remembering the fragile pup she once held against her chest, praying he'd take another breath. "You were left to die," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "But you chose to live, and you've changed my life forever." His tail wagged as if he understood, his eyes glowing with gratitude.